Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Tensions are rising sharply between Washington and Tehran as President Donald Trump warns that Iran, quote, cannot have a nuclear weapon and suggests, quote, bad things will happen without a deal. With US military assets building up in the region and diplomacy still ongoing, is the Middle East on the brink of escalation? Well, to answer that question, we're joined by Ellias Aghili Dehnavi. He's political scientist at the Adam Mickiewicz University. Dr. Dehnavi, welcome back to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Good evening, and thank you so much for the invitation.
So, you're welcome. So, how do you assess the level of threat of some kind of kinetic action on Iran?
To begin with, I should say that the current waves of actions are actually having a deterrence nature. Both parties, Iran and the United States, are calculating the strategic patience of each other. Tehran is conducting maneuvers in the Persian Gulf, and the United States is deploying its aircraft carriers and military assets to the Middle East. So they're not actually planning for a war, but rather they're trying to set the condition for having a higher hand in negotiation. It is not an immediate threat currently, because, as I say, the strategy is not a strategic move for the United States to conduct a comprehensive and full-fledged war at the moment. But the risk of escalation and miscalculation remains on the table. So it is possible that a tiny miscalculation from both sides leads to an uncontrolled or unleashed war.
All right. So what is it that Iran wants to do, or Tehran wants to do at the moment? You say that they're testing one another's patience on this. What outcome does Tehran want?
Well, if there is a conflict, if there was a conflict to occur, Tehran would definitely rely on an attritional strategy to exhaust, not to defeat the enemy, which is the United States. So the Iranians, which are that's the master of asymmetric warfare, would try to exhaust the Americans in order to increase the economic and political pressure on the other side. Because technically speaking, the U.S. overwhelming conventional military strength can defeat the Iranian on the ground. So, of course, and from a realistic perspective, Iranians are not trying to enter a full-fledged war. Rather, they would like to exhaust their adversary. This movement can be done via a time-consuming negotiation or via asymmetric warfare in the Persian Gulf.
Right. OK. Well, Trump has made it clear that he wants a surgical strike like he did at the end of last year against Tehran's nuclear sites. You think it's likely that he will get involved in a protracted war with Tehran?
Well, this time it would be totally different, because we have to also consider the political pressure and the domestic pressure on the Iranian government. So if the United States trigger any sort of attack into the Iranian territorial integration, or any threat into the Iranian internal integration, the regime response would be most probably different. So if Americans want to conduct the same attack, then the retaliation from the Iranian side would be broader this time. But doing a discourse analysis and by paying more attention and probing the discourses from the American politicians and also Donald Trump, the president, we can witness that they're actually aiming for greater achievement. And I can say that a regime change or a change in the political structure in Tehran is strongly on the table. So this attack, this time, if anything actually is going to happen, if this imaginary war or if this imaginary condition or scenario is going to happen, then most probably the political structure would also stay on the table. So the attack won't be limited only to the nuclear facilities or the military facilities, but also it will include the political structure of Tehran.
Well, if that were to be the case, hypothetically speaking, of course, then the leadership of Tehran, of Iran, would have their backs against the wall, including the Revolutionary Guard. They are basically, they'd be fighting for their survival. How dangerous can they get? Can they, for example, use their proxies in some way, like Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis, to help in a counterattack?
Well, IRGC will definitely result in asymmetric retaliation. The U.S. bases in the, Arabian countries and the Persian Gulf countries will be the immediate target for the IRGC, because as you clearly and technically mentioned, the IRGC and all the loyal forces will have nothing to lose. So they most probably will start comprehensive retaliation, and they will target the U.S. bases as they have previously threatened. The other thing that IRGC might resort to is the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, as they did days ago in a controlled maneuver. They partially closed and blocked the Hormuz Strait for some hours. And that was a strong signal, to the American side, that if anything happens, we've got the capability to block this strategic strait. So proxies, of course, they're, a very immediate means for Tehran and for the IRGC to act on their behalf.
What about the other countries in the region? I'm thinking of Saudi Arabia in particular, but Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, and so on. What if you were sitting in one of those countries right now, what would you be most concerned about?
I would be concerned about the status quo. If I were living in Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, or one of the skyscrapers in Dubai, I would definitely want the economic stability. I would prefer the oil price to be as it is now. I would prefer foreign investment. I would prefer the stability in my aviation and in my airport and the security of my water in the Persian Gulf. So most probably the Arab nations and the countries that you mentioned are pro-status quo. And the Iranian government is a non-conformist actor. They are selling the security in this region. So they need to buy security. That's why Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and specifically speaking Oman, have done their best, have done what they could to stop an immediate strike from the American side. Because any miscalculation and any full-fledged war in this region would definitely and directly threaten their economic and political and security interests in the region. As I said earlier, IRGC will immediately target the American bases in those countries. And it will affect and spiral the price of oil dramatically.
Well, that may be so in the short term, but can these Arab countries afford to allow Iran to have a nuclear bomb?
Of course not. Definitely not, because that will be an existential threat. To all these governments. We're not only talking about Israel, or we're not only, concerned about the security and safety of Israel, but also the other Arab nations, because we're dealing with a revolutionary ideology in Tehran, a non-conformist adversary form of revolutionary ideology that believes in the spirit of their concepts and notion. So from an ideological perspective, and from a military and security perspective, it will be a direct existential threat to those countries. And it will begin and initiate a security dilemma, because those countries will start to increase their military capabilities in response to the Iranian nuclear advancement. And if hypothetically Iranians get their hands on nuclear weapon, then this security dilemma will increase and increase. That's why the Americans are strictly pressing Iran to move towards a complete non-proliferation.
Yes, but Dr. Dehnavi, in the last minute or so that we have left, none of these Arab countries have done anything to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. It seems that President Trump and Israel are the only two players who are willing to take action to prevent it. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, we are not sure about the lobbies or the behind the curtain discussions, because we know that some of these Arab countries are a member of the Abraham Pact, namely United Arab Emirates, that is, one of the biggest adversary of the Iranian nuclear advancement in the region. So we can see that the foreign policy of these countries is more U.S. oriented and more security oriented when being compared with the Saudis that are keeping a traditional relation with the Iranians. But technically and scientifically speaking and geopolitically speaking, yes, they have done no tangible or no concrete action, or they haven't taken any tangible measurement to stop Tehran advancement towards a nuclear, weaponry level, or stop their nuclear program to achieve an atomic bomb. But lobbies and the secretive diplomatic negotiations definitely have been conducted.
Understood. Dr. Dehnavi, thank you so much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, and let's pray for
you.
peace.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.